You've seen Independence Day, right? I mean, all of these type of, apocalyptic type of stuff. Or Close Encounters, right? It's just awesome, right? Not awesome, but awesome, like full of awe, right? This is something out of the ordinary. So Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. Hello, how are you? Well, how are you? And they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in a fire. And smoke went up like the smoke of a kiln, while the whole mountain was shaking violently. Oh yeah, that's something else. There's like an earthquake, which is awesome. And the blast of the trumpet grew louder and louder, and Moses would speak, and so they would hear them talk back and forth, and God would answer him out of the thunder. When the Lord descended on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up, and then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down." I just got here. The Lord said to Moses, "Go down," and warned the people don't to break through to the Lord to look, otherwise they're going to perish, right? Again, it has to do with the boundaries. Even the priests who approach the Lord have to consecrate themselves to the Lord, or the Lord's going to break out against them. So again, sort of a wordplay going on there about breaking out. Moses said to the Lord, "The people aren't permitted to come up on Mount Sinai. You yourself warned us, saying, 'Set limits around the mountain, keep it holy,'" right? Which is what was in the previous thing. And the Lord said to him, "Okay, so go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you." Oh my God, he's got to come up too. "Bringing Aaron with you, but don't let any of the priests or the people break through to come up on the Lord, otherwise he's going to break out against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them. So he's down there and he's talking to them. He's going to bring Aaron up. And this is what happens. They actually hear God speak. Chapter 20. Then God spoke all these words. There's a perfectly good, we call these things the Ten Commandments, and it's never, ever, 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 ever called that in the Bible. These things are never, ever, ever called commandments in the Bible. My humble, I don't know how accurate it is, but my humble opinion is that these aren't supposed to be thought of as commandments. These aren't things like, these in fact things, I don't think that these things are like apodictic laws. These aren't things that you put in your Outlook calendar. Oh, that's right, I need to not commit adultery today, and you have to remember that, right? No. These aren't commandments like that. These are just basic principles. This is just stuff that you just sort of assume about this relationship. That all of those other types of laws that we'll talk about in a second, all those other types of laws sort of come from, right? There are certain types of things that are just assumed in societies that laws are based on. What's funny is that very often when you go into a new society, you can take a look at the laws and you can sort of infer what those basic principles are, principles that you may not have, right? What happens here, for me at least, what happens here is that those are made explicit from the very beginning, those basic principles. And here they are. "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." Suzerain. You are here, and I brought you out. We have a relationship, right? Again, the whole thing starts off by claiming not that you don't have a relationship and you've got to do all these things to get into a relationship. No. The relationship is the basis of the whole thing. In fact, the relationship is based upon not what you're doing, but about what God has done. Before you even start, "I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And so you shall have no other gods before me or besides me." And again, it's a difference there. But in practical, do they think that there's other, again, the whole question is, do they believe that there's other gods? Well, of course. It's the ancient world. They believe that there's other gods. It doesn't really matter whether there's other gods or not. The question is, who are you going to obey? Yahweh says, "Don't kill." Marduk says, "Don't kill." You don't kill. Yahweh says, "Don't steal." Marduk says, "Yeah, you can steal in certain situations." You don't steal. You see how it works? If Yahweh says it, it goes. Because we have the special relationship here, regardless of what other gods might say. So, you have no other gods before me. 2. I call these things the Big Ten. So that's number 1. 2, don't make for yourself any idol. An idol of what? An idol of Marduk? An idol of Baal? No, I don't think so. Because we've already been told those things are out of bounds anyway. What are we making an idol of? We're making an idol of Yahweh. Don't do that. Don't make an idol. Don't make a picture. Don't make a statue of me as if I'm anything in the form of anything that's in heaven above or on the earth beneath or it's in the water under the earth. Don't bow down to them, that is those statues. Don't worship them, because I'm a jealous God. I, in fact, not that idol, right? I get jealous whenever people start worshiping things that aren't me, even if you think it is me. I'm a jealous God. And in fact, this is how jealous I am. Punishing children for the iniquity of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who reject me. But showing steadfast love to the 1000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. God is a jealous God. And we all know. We all know that jealousy is not a good thing. And I know that. I know that very well. In fact, this came up actually last week. My wife and I were invited to a party. And we went over there. And it was somebody that she works with, some man that she works with, and we went over to their house. And so we show up and ring the doorbell, and we're sitting there at the door, and the guy comes up and opens the door. And he sees my wife, and he reaches over and he gives her a big hug, gives her a peck on the cheek, and then looks at me kind of and sort of says hi. And then they go off, which is fine, because I'm not jealous. And so I go in, and I eventually, of course, find the bar, and always have a drink. And I'm trying to, I'm an introvert, but I try to do my best in these types of things. And I'm there, and I just noticed the host and my wife over there across the room, and she's like leaning against the wall, and he's like leaning up. So I'm talking to them, and he's like whispering in her ear, and she's like laughing at everything. Oh, no. That's fine, because I'm not jealous. And things go on during the party. About an hour and a half, I'm about ready to go. So I try to find my wife, and I asked some people, have you seen my wife? And they said, yeah, she's in the back of the house somewhere. And so I go in the back of the house, and I can hear her because the door's closed. And in fact, it's locked. But I can hear her on the other side, and it sounds like she's having a great time. And I hear his voice too. But that's fine, because I'm not jealous. Bull! Right? Of course not. This didn't happen, by the way.
I know, it did, yeah.
Right. No. In certain types of relationships, in certain types of formal relationships, jealousy, if it's not there, is just weird. Right? In the type of relationship that exists, the formalized relationship that Israel has with Yahweh, jealousy is entirely appropriate. In fact, if God is not jealous, there's something wrong. Second, so what happens when we break that relationship? I play this game sometimes. What if Roy Heller were God? In fact, I play it every day, whether I realize it or not, right? And I think you do too. But anyway, what if Roy Heller were God? And here's what if Roy Heller were God. This is the way I would phrase this law. Don't make any statue of me, right? Because I'm jealous. And in fact, this is how jealous I am. I punish for the iniquity of the parents. I punish children for the iniquity of the parents to the 1000th generation of those who reject me. And I'll bless to the 3rd or 4th generation of those who love me. That's the way I would do it, because I want to instill the fear of God, Roy, in you. Right? But But just notice the way in which it's phrased here. In fact, it's not said that way. In fact, there is punishment. But it's to the third, fourth generation. But there's absolute steadfast love, care, faithfulness for that relationship to the 1,000th generation of those who love me. That is, another way of saying it, keeping my commandments. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Judgment is never the end of the story. The end of the story is always to the 1,000th generation grace. Always. Old Testament, New Testament, doesn't matter. Cool. So, you can't have a statue. And I'll just go ahead and say this. We do this all the time. We do this all the time. We did it right up here before. The pastor of St. Luke's down in Houston does this all the time. And that is we get a certain way in which we think about God in our heads and we can't get rid of it. I know it's not like a physical statue, but it's still an idol. Right? Well, I don't understand how a father can do that because God's not a father. And God's not a suzerain. And in fact, God's not a deity. In fact, even the word God itself is a metaphor for something that is beyond all of us. Beyond all of us that we have the most intimate relationship with. Me, myself, what I call that mystery. That's what I call it. Because I don't know what else to call it. Because anything else reduces it. But you've got to use words. And so we use things like God, we use things like Yahweh, we use things like suzerain, we use things like Father, we use things like, judge, we use things like, lawgiver, we use things like, lots of things. Miracle worker, we use lots of different words. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we use lots of different words. What God says is that never, ever, 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 ever think that those words are me. You can use them, but it's always a metaphor. Because, in fact, who is he? I am. Who I am. What does that mean? That's what that means. God alone, no images, and in fact, here's the real kicker. You can't even use the name wrongly. Even the name, you can't use wrongly. Because that's really, really bad. No forgiveness. And we do this all the time too. We've seen it time and time again in our own stories. And that is when I start getting in trouble, that's who I blame. Whenever I get in an argument with somebody, I love pulling in God to win my point. That's using the name for my own status, for my own advancement, for my own. Let me explain something. God is very large, and we're very small. God's not there to do what I want. You can't even use the name. Remember the Sabbath day? Keep it holy, keep it separate, keep it special. 6 days you labor, do all your work. The 7th day is a Sabbath, day of rest to the Lord your God, and don't do any work. You, your son, your daughter, male, meat, female, slave, livestock, even the person who isn't even a citizen, who's just living with you, right, in your towns. And why do we do that? Because in 6 days the Lord God made heaven and earth, the sea, and everything that's in them, and rested on the 7th day, because the Lord blessed the 7th day, or the Sabbath day, and consecrated it. I love this one. This one I love. Sometimes I love it. When we were at that cocktail party, it was really funny, which didn't happen. But when we were at that cocktail party last week, it's really funny is that you walk up to someone and you say, "Oh, hi, what's your name?" And it was Mary. "Oh, that's funny." "Oh, it's not funny. That's funny. That's the name of my Lord's mother." No. go around and you say, you know, so the first thing you say is, what is your name? And the second thing you ask is, what do you do? Right? What's your job? What do you do? It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Is that the way, two ways in which we primarily identify people. What they're called, but even more is what their job is, where they fit into society, what they do, what their work is. For me at least, I think that this particular law right here undercuts that. And that is, we are not what we do. And in fact, we are reminded of that at least once a week, where we stop doing that. And in fact, our primary understanding of ourselves is not in what we do, but in that relationship that we have with our suzerain, that relationship that we have with our Lord. That's what defines us. Cool. And now we switch. So that's the first four. And now we switch to relationships with each other. These all have to do with our relationship with God. Now we have relationships with each other. And the very first one is how we relate to the past, which is really, really important. Being in a profession that for very many religious people is counted as not important. I can tell you, Old Testament, I can tell you that old is wonderful. And the older I get, the more and more I really do appreciate it. So the very first thing is looking at the past and how we relate to the past. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days, so we looked at the past for our future. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And then we hit four of them really quickly. Ready? Here we go. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. And also don't lie on, again, it's not just, it doesn't have to do with just lying. It really does, don't bear false witness. Don't say something false when you're testifying. It actually has to do with law courts, I mean specifically. I'm not saying that you can lie otherwise, but what this law has to do with in law courts, when you're on the stand, right? And Assistant District Attorney Jim McCoy, right, or Jack McCoy is like standing, Chong Chong is like there, and like asking you questions. You can't perjure yourself, because of course if you do that, then the whole thing falls apart. That's what. So don't lie on the stand. And then finally, 17, the last one. Don't covet your neighbor's house. Don't covet your neighbor's knights. I heard you, Debbie. I heard you scream. Okay. Oh, you still have 2 minutes? Okay, good, excellent. I foresaw the future. I am a prophet. And then the last one, don't covet your neighbor's house, don't covet your neighbor's wife, don't covet your neighbor's male or female slave or ox or donkey, or in fact, anything else, right? In fact, anything, including all of those, but in fact, anything else, don't covet. And the question is, what is coveting? Because of course, if coveting means to want, then that sort of undercuts all of capitalism. And we certainly know that that's not true. But it really is more than that. The word for covet here is amad. And the way and again, this is just me, and I think I read it in an Exodus commentary, which was spawned in the pit of hell. But I think I read it, and that is, for me at least, what the word covet means. A good way of thinking about coveting is obsessing. Don't obsess about your neighbor's wife, or your neighbor's house, or your neighbor's whatever. That is, of course, don't make that thing. It kind of goes all the way back to the idol. Don't make that thing the center of your life. Don't make that thing the thing that you wake up in the morning needing, wanting, desiring. Don't obsess about things. Those of you who've been here for a while know my good friend Jamie Clark Souls, who does New Testament. St. Michael and All Angels, which is a big Episcopal church that direction, a few miles that direction.